As you can see, I got some lovely nachos. I'm absolutely starving, so I'm going to dig in here real quick. Oh, that's good. Got my orange bubbly. There's a nice jalapeno in there. So first things first, before I get into my story, I got some shout outs. Joseph Does More. Big shout out to you, Joseph. Joseph Does More. Colleen Page 1466. Big shout out to you as well. Colleen is a very supportive viewer. Curry Event Services Photography. A big shout out to you. That man's been with me from pretty much day one. Give me lots of advice and support, and I appreciate it very much. I'm sure when he sees my lighting, he must cringe sometimes. So, I got these nachos from a local restaurant. These are good, but they're not as good as ones I make at home. And I wanted to make some today, but then I thought, you know what, I'm getting kind of pressed for time. And also the weather is so beautiful. I want to get into the pool this afternoon, so I went and bought these. These are still pretty good, but just not as good as the ones I make. So I bought my first house in 1983. Paid $50,000 for it. The people who sold it to me, they were an English couple, Jack and Sheila. She was actually English, he was Canadian. But they bought it 2 years earlier for $65,900. So they lost a bit of money on it. So what happened was we went to realtors and all that. But she was from England, he's from Canada. And they would move back to England and then move back to Canada, this sort of thing. They had this blue Volvo station wagon with the steering wheel on the other side. Which kind of reminds me of a joke. Why the Siamese twins moved to England? So the other one could drive. But anyways, they had this blue Volvo, and every time they moved back to England, which seemed to be every few years, they would ship that back with them. So the reason they were selling their house was because they had bought it, and it was a 3-story house. A very nice character home, 3-story home, character home. And the whole attic, they completely refinished the whole attic with a 1x6 tongue and groove cedar. They had a beautiful job. They had like a Murphy bed that came out of the wall. There was a sink, but no toilet or shower, nothing like that. And they'd fixed it up because their daughter was moving. Supposedly, she was still in England, and she was going to move over to Canada and live here and go to school. So they completely redid the whole attic, like which would be the 3rd floor, so that she would have a place to sleep, and that'd be her quarters, kind of. So this particular house, when you walk in, on the main floor is actually the basement. The 2nd floor is the main floor, and then the attic. You know, in Vancouver Island, you can't dig a lot of holes, so the house is, the basement is actually the main floor. As where in Saskatchewan, the dirt was soft, you could actually have a basement underground. But you can't do that on the island here. So, had this house all fixed up. They were looking forward to her coming over. About 3 months before she's going to arrive, she phones and says she met a guy, she's fallen in love, and she's staying in England. So, they were disappointed, but they packed up all their stuff. And they went back to England, and they took their blue Volvo with them. I don't know what it costs to ship a vehicle, but it can't be cheap. So anyway, one thing they left behind was this really unattractive, ornamental, electric fireplace type thing. The kind you plug in, it's got a monitor on the wall that radiates heat and has like some color to it, lights inside and all that. Kind of hokey, but it threw off a bit of heat, but we came to the conclusion rather quickly it was probably sucking more electricity than what it was worth. So I removed about 6 or 8 Phillips screws, took it out of there, and unplugged it, of course, and stuck it up in the attic in one of the crawl spaces. So anyways, like I said, we took possession November 1st, 83. Jack and Sheila were gone. So normally November is a windy, stormy month, a lot of branches down, power outages, ferry cancellations, that sort of thing. But for some reason, there was about a week or 2 in that November that was really nice. I mean, it wasn't swing weather, but it was light jacket weather for sure, which is unusual for November, bright and sunny and warm. These nachos are good, like I said, not as good as mine, but they got red pepper, green onion, some beans on there, and jalapenos, whatever. Lots of cheese. So anyway, so I'm out there one day in the middle of November in the front yard doing something, and I hear somebody behind me. And I turn around, and it's my neighbor from across the road. He comes over, and he says, "How do you like your new house?" And I said, "Oh, I like it. It's really nice. It's my first house. I'm quite happy with it." And so we get talking. He turns out his name is Jimmy. He's an older guy. He was, when I met him then, he was about 59. So anyway, he was retired. He retired early. He had retired at 55. So we're talking about the house, and I said, one thing I want to do is put a bathroom upstairs because it doesn't have a bathroom, just a sink. And there's only one bathroom on the main floor and for a 3-story house. And there's my ex and I. We plan on having kids. So we need another bathroom. So he says, "I just put a bathroom in at my place. Why don't you come over and have a look at it?" So I said, "Sure," being very neighborly. So his house is a bit newer than the one I bought. The one I bought was an older character home. At that time, probably, maybe 50 years old. I'm thinking his house was probably built in the late 60s, maybe. Late 60s, early 70s. Just by the style of it. His house today looks a little bit different because he used to have a carport on the left-hand side of the house. There was 2 driveways, a driveway to the garage and a driveway up the carport. But the people who bought the house, after he was gone, they filled in the carport. Refried beans are really good on here. So we go to his house, go to the garage. His garage is full of stuff, no room to put his car in there. got lots of tools, beautiful tools. DeWalt, Rockwell, really nice stuff. Real good stuff. And so he shows me his bathroom that he just put in. And he just built a bedroom downstairs. He had an extra bed and all that. And so I'm thinking, why? I said, do you have like kids, grandkids? He says, no, I've never been married. I've been a bachelor all my life. So I thought, okay, well, that's kind of interesting. I mean, couldn't understand why you'd be building a spare bedroom in the basement and have a full bathroom shower, like a 4-piece bathroom, and just him, basically. But I thought, well, maybe he has a lot of guests coming or something. So he wants to show me the rest of the house. So we're walking upstairs. I couldn't help but notice that the house is as neat as a pin. I mean, there's not a piece of lint or a hair or nothing. So, and the more we talk, the more I find out that he's been a bachelor all his life. He just retired when he's 55, and he'd been with the same company the last 25 years. He drove a forklift for a company that supplied produce to a lot of restaurants and stores and whatever, that sort of thing. So that's what he did. And, he had a couple of pensions. In Canada, you can have the old age pension when you turn 65. Or you can defer it to a later time. When you're 70, you get more money, but then you'd have to wait. And then there's that's the old age pension, and there's the Canada pension. You can start drawing on that when you're 60, but it's better to wait till you turn 65 because you get more. So he had his work pension, which is a real kick-ass pension because he'd been in the same place for 25 years and he'd worked all his life. And he had a military pension because he was in World War II. So he was able to live on those. And when he would turn 65, he'd be drawing the old age pension and the Canada pension. So he'd be making more money as a retired person than he was when he worked. So he was comfortable financially. So we talked a bit, and he told me that, like I said, he had been a bachelor all his life. His mom had passed away a few years ago, and his dad had died when he was about 14, so him and his mom just stayed in the house, and they lived together. And he just went to work, and she made his lunch for him, and he even said, well, I guess I'm kind of a mama's boy or something like that. And I just, well, not a big deal, but, nothing wrong with that. So anyways, that was his story. Now, I found out later that his mom died. I assume she just died a few years earlier, but she passed away in 63, and she died on Christmas Day. So, Christmas was not a joyful time. He never celebrated Christmas for Jimmy. Christmas was kind of a time of mourning, really. It was not his favorite day. Now, Jimmy was, he was a funny guy. To kind of paint you a picture where he looked like he was balding. Always had a big gut, always smoked like a chimney. And he loved summertime. And during the really nice weather, late spring, summer, early fall, he'd be out there in just a pair of navy blue shorts and his flip-flops. He'd put a shirt on if he was going somewhere, and he loved to be outside. And in front of his house, he had a little little retaining wall. He'd sit on that, and he'd just chat with everybody. He knew everybody in the neighborhood. He was very chatty. He was as comfortable talking to, a pope or a prime minister or president as he was to me or anybody else in the neighborhood. And like I said, he seemed to know everyone. Everyone knew him. He knew how to break the ice. He was very chatty. Of course, he liked to argue sometimes too. He liked to poke the bear. And it was kind of funny because was, my son made me a mailbox in shop class. This would be years later. And I wanted to mount it on my wall inside the carport, but it was all stucco. So I had to drill into the stucco, mount a piece of wood that I had stained to match the mailbox, and then attach the mailbox to that piece of wood. And he comes outside and says he's still working on that 10-minute job. Well, if all I had to do was attach it to the house, it would have been 10 minutes, but, I had to do a lot more than that. But, he liked to sort of, poke the bear a bit. He loved arguing politics and stuff. Now, the whole time I knew Jimmy, he always seemed to be like a loner. But yet, he was very chatty. He knew everybody, but I never saw anyone go to his house to visit, except maybe a health nurse, a Jehovah's Witness, or his next door neighbors, or my other neighbors. But he had neighbors next door, Norman and Shirley. They were very nice people. They were his age. They'd been neighbors with Jimmy for years and years. So anyway. So that was basically the way Jimmy was. He seemed to be a loner. I never once saw him with a girlfriend. He didn't seem to have any interest in women. I never saw him with a girl, or like a woman. He never dated. But then he never seemed to have any buddies either, We ran into him down the bar one time. He came in by himself, he was just always by himself, which I just thought was kind of odd. Like, even after working for 25 years in the same company, he never had a co-worker come visit or nothing, which is kind of weird, And I couldn't figure out why, because he could be very likable, and he was likable, I had no problem with him. He kind of got on my nerves sometimes, but, excuse me, as a neighbor, and a friend, he was a good guy. And if you did get into an argument with him, he'd be the first one, a day or two later to sort of come over in his own way, apologize, and sort of act like nothing happened, you know what I mean? He'd be the first to make up, kind of. I remember one time, he'd do funny stuff, like, he got into an argument with Norman and Shirley, his next door neighbors, with their son. His son was in maybe about 25, about 25. He was very arrogant, and I didn't care much for him, but anyways, he got into an argument with their son about something, about property line or something. And so Jimmy says, well, I'm going to paint up a for sale sign and stick in my front lawn. When they find out I'm moving, they'll be sorry. So he did that. Painted up a for sale sign, made it look really good. Stuck it on his front lawn. That was so funny because Norman and Shirley were very upset. They said, Jimmy, are you moving? They were just, they actually thought he was moving, and so he got the reaction he wanted anyway. It was just kind of funny. But Jimmy, as far as I know, had one sister, his little sister, Dorothy, and she was married to her husband, Scotty. Scotty and Jimmy kind of looked the same, kind of round face, balding, And he had a nephew that he didn't seem to care for, who was a mailman, but I'd met him once or twice. But aside from that, he never seemed to have any relatives or family, just his little sister, kept to himself. Now, Jimmy could be very generous and very helpful. If you said, Jimmy, I need a new couch or a bed, he'd give you one, or he'd buy you one, that sort of thing, right? But I remember he had this big TV. Shortly after when I first met him, he had one of those great big 26-inch consoles with the wood console, like it looks like a piece of furniture, the kind your grandparents probably had. Yeah, one of those. He said, when I get a new TV, I'm giving you this one. years later, lo and behold, he gets a new TV and he says, Mark, come on over, I'm giving you my old TV. So I went across the street and him and I, he had one little four-wheel dollies. We just rolled it across the street, then we carried it up the stairs. You know, compared to our little 12-inch black and white, that 26-inch color was really nice. Funny enough, a few years later, you do the same thing. After he grew tired of the new TV he bought, because the one he gave us, I think it was an RCA. Then I think he got a Quasar or something. Then he gave us that one. It was a bit more streamlined. It didn't have the big wooden console type thing. And then he wanted a new one. He got himself so he gave us this Quasar. Then he got a Hitachi, a real nice TV, state of the art for then. You know, really nice. When I first met him, he drove what was that now? Was it 1978? Oh, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a nice vehicle. It'll pop into my head. But after a few years of driving that, he traded it in. He got himself I think it was a Toyota 4Runner or something like that. And he seemed to like that. And he drove that for a few years, then got another one. You know, he if he needed something, he just bought it. You know, that sort of thing. So this one time, he was one of these guys that ate a lot of TV dinners and stuff. Now his little sister Dorothy, every Sunday she did this for years. The whole time we knew him. She would have him over for Sunday dinner without fail. The only time he wouldn't go was if he wasn't feeling good. I remember one time he said, you know, I was so sick I couldn't even go to my little sister's place for supper. But every Sunday without fail, that was just the tradition, the routine, that he'd go there for supper. Sunday dinner. So this one time, you know, he got himself a brand new microwave convection oven because he was tired of eating TV dinners. He wanted to learn how to cook and do some stuff. So I said, I'll show you how to make a few things. So we went and got some ribs. He said, you want to learn how to make ribs? I said, that's easy. Got some ribs. And I just said, you just simmer these. You know, let these simmer for a long time till they're nice and tender, probably a few hours, you know. I'll come over and check on them if you want. And take them out, put them in a nice little flat, you know, a Pyrex dish or roasting pan, whatever you have. Dump on your barbecue sauce, throw them in the oven. He did that. He couldn't believe how easy it was. Next thing you know, he had ribs. He thought it was great. I think he ate ribs every night for about 3 weeks. He was enjoying it so much. I showed him how to make a few other things. And he caught on quite quickly, you know. I couldn't imagine TV dinners all the time. Now you're probably wondering, is there a correlation between Jimmy and Natchos? There is actually. One time he was over at my place, we're in the carport, I was doing something, probably working on my boat or something, and you know, he's over there yakking at me, and it was getting close to dinner, my ex pulled in. She gets to the car, she has a couple of bags of groceries, and Jimmy says, what's in the bag? And she goes, dinner. And he, you know, facetiously says, what are we having? And she says, nachos. He's like, what are those nachos? I keep hearing about nachos. I've never had those before. He says, well, you want to stay for dinner? We'll make some for you. So he did, and he loved them. Really enjoyed them. It was funny, because maybe 4 or 5 nights later, the phone rings. My ex answers, and she goes, oh, hi, Jimmy. And I could just hear the one side of the conversation, which was hers, and she's saying, okay, yeah, just buy some nachos, just get any kind you want. Grate the cheese and, get some of this and that, She was telling him how to make nachos, kind of refreshing his memory, right? So that was another thing he ate, about every night for weeks on end, because he loved them so much. But he was a funny guy. So, remember that fireplace that took off the wall and stuck up in the attic? Well, about 2 years after we bought our house, I get a phone call from Jack and Sheila. They've moved back to Canada. They were in England for about 2 years. They moved back to Canada, brought the Volvo station wagon with them. And he said, "Did you still have that fireplace?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I disconnected it and took it off the wall, but I still have it." He said, "I'd like to buy it off you." And I said, "You can have it." So he came over and gave it to him. We yacked for a while and had a good visit. And then they were moving up to the Sunshine Coast, which is north of Vancouver. Beautiful area. I think Joni Mitchell has a place up there. They used to film this really corny TV show called The Beachcombers. That was about 50 years ago. It was really popular in every country but Canada. I think it was really popular in Australia and places like that. But Linda and I were up there last fall. We rented some e-bikes and we had a great time. It's beautiful up there. But they moved up there. Never heard from them again. So this one time, Jimmy is telling me he wants to get a new table saw. And he had his eye on a new table saw he'd been wanting to get. And I can't remember what kind it was. But it was a kind I never heard of. I mean, I've heard of different ones like Rockwell and Skill and whatever. But it was some name I never heard, but it was very expensive. It was $1,500. Now this was back around the early 90s. So we're going back about 30 years. So you imagine $1,500 for a table saw back then, what that would translate into in today's money. So he's telling me about this table saw he wants to buy. So this one day, I just happened to be looking out the window. Our house had a big, beautiful picture window. You couldn't help but look down the street whenever you walk by. And I see Jimmy backing into his driveway with this little utility trailer. And he's got something on the back there. And I realized it's his table saw. He went and picked it up and he's bringing it home. So I went and put my shoes on and moseyed over there. By that time, he was out of his vehicle and in behind his vehicle, disconnecting the trailer hitch. So he's got this big, beautiful table saw on there. He disconnects the trailer hitch. And because of the weight, the trailer just went up like that. I mean, the trailer hitch itself just about belted him in the head. Just missed him. But what happens was when it did that, the table saw just went right off the truck, or right off the trailer, and onto the driveway, onto the cement, just went bang. Oh, I felt so sorry for Jimmy. He was so livid. I'd never seen him that mad in my whole life. He was absolutely turning purple. So I said, okay, let's get this thing sitting up right. So we lifted it up. I said, it's not going to be any good now. May as well take it back. Because it was very expensive and it was it was like almost had like a micrometer type of gauging system, so you could really measure your wood accurately and really do your angles and everything right. And he was afraid something would have been busted on that, so that it wouldn't be accurate anymore. But as it turned out, it barely even scratched it. It didn't affect anything on it, and it was built very well. So lucky for him. But I'll never forget that. I just felt so sorry for him. He just bought that thing, and all of a sudden it goes bang like that. Wow. not that much. He always drank his beer warm. But he told me that he was actually an alcoholic. He could not touch hard liquor. He said hard liquor really has an effect on him. And we've seen that a couple of times with him. The whole time that we lived there. He went on a couple of benders. Didn't happen very often, like, you know, maybe every 4 or 5 years. Well, we only saw it twice, but, and he'd go on a bender for maybe 5 or 6 weeks. And he could not handle hard liquor. One time during the middle of the day, I was coming home from somewhere. I'm driving up the street and I see Jimmy. He's almost floating. You know, he's trying to make his way up the street. He's just looped. But then he'd get off that hard liquor and he'd be fine again for years. It was kind of sad because Jimmy, it's just too bad that he didn't have somebody in his life. Like a lot of people thought, well, maybe he was gay, and because of his generation, maybe he was in denial and just couldn't deal with that or didn't want to, I don't know, I don't think anybody really cared. It's too bad that he didn't have somebody. He would have made an awesome dad because he was so good with my kids and the neighbor kids. He was so good. And the only time I saw him lose his temper was that time his saw fell off the back of the trailer. That was the only time. But he talked to himself a lot. Now, I talk to myself sometimes too. I'll say, okay, where's my nachos? Okay, I gotta get that camera on, and that sort of thing, kind of motivate myself. But he would carry on a conversation with an imaginary friend, for instance. I mean, one time I looked out the window, he's standing in his driveway, and he's going like this. He's making all these gestures. It's like he's standing there talking to somebody, right? But he was by himself. And I remember this hot summer evening, I walked up his driveway. I was going to his house. I could hear him talking away to somebody. He was actually arguing with somebody. And I kept there, and he has this door open, just a screen, and doors there, and I could see him at the table. He's just carrying on this big argument with somebody that wasn't there. That's kind of how lonely he was, So I just kind of backed up a bit, then kind of made some noise coming up there and banged on the door. Jimmy, are you home? This kind of thing. I didn't want to embarrass him. I think Jimmy was a loner who didn't like to be alone, One time, he used rather bad judgment. It was at Halloween. This one Halloween, probably somewhere in the early 90s. He had bought a great big teddy bear, and he was going to sort of raffle that off. Now, Jimmy was very generous with Halloween candy. I mean, Linda and I buy those bags of Kit Kats, little tiny Kit Kats. And if I buy them too early, I eat them all before Halloween, so I gotta buy more. But you know what I mean, right? Why, he'd go to Costco and get these big chocolate, like regular sized candy bars, like the big candy bars, right? And he'd hand those out. He was very generous that way. He'd spent a lot of money on Halloween candy. And so, this one time he bought that big, beautiful teddy bear and he wanted to auction it or raffle it off. So when kids came to his door, he was taking down their name. Excuse me. He was taking down their names and their phone numbers. Now, that's not something I would have done for a couple of reasons, because when you get a lot of kids lined up there, it's going to take forever. And I just wouldn't use that kind of judgment to take down little kids' names, it didn't seem like a good idea, but he saw nothing wrong with it. So he's doing that. Well, I guess one of the kids told their parents, and the parents phoned the police. So next thing you know, Jimmy's got a visit from the RCMP. These two officers pull up. Excuse me. That pepper was hot. Wow. Ooh, I felt that. And heard a complaint. Well, Jimmy was very humiliated, very embarrassed, and very hurt. Easy to see why, you know. His intentions were good, you know. His intentions were not to, there was, you know, they were misplaced. You know, he just wanted to raffle off this teddy bear. It wasn't like he was John Wayne Gacy, you know. It was, you know, the furthest thing from it. He was a lovely man, but he was very, like I said, embarrassed. You know, because I mean, the whole street's full of kids, and their parents are out there, you know, escorting their kids, and there's firecrackers, and you know, and all of a sudden there's a cop car there at Jimmy's house, and people want to know what's going on, and they can see him in there talking to the police. And if that wasn't bad enough, Jimmy's little sister, her husband Scotty, has a police scanner, so he heard them sending a police car to Jimmy's residence. So they were very concerned. So I felt sorry for Jimmy, because his intentions were above board, you know. But unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. So we did nothing about it. Sadly, from then on, he never celebrated Halloween. At Halloween, his lights were always off, his house was always dark. So he never celebrated Christmas, never celebrated Halloween. He told me quite a few times his favorite day of the year was the winter solstice, when the days started getting longer. He didn't really like winter, but occasionally when it would snow, mostly it just rains on the island, but you know, we do get snow, but not very much. So when it would snow, it was a real novelty. He'd be out there at midnight, shoveling his driveway and drinking coffee, smoking a cigarette, and shoveling away. You know, he loved it. So these nachos are good. Not as good as mine, but they're pretty good. So it was one day in March of '99. Standing there looking out my front window, and I see Jimmy suddenly run out of his house, go to the back of his truck and get someone to run back in. And all he's wearing is a pair of navy blue shorts like he always does. And it's a blustery day. And I still have that picture in my head. You know, it's been there now for years. And I'll tell you why in a second. So the next day, his next door neighbor Shirley, it's my day off. She phones me up. I just said, Jimmy phoned me this morning, said he wasn't feeling good, wanted to know if I could drive him to the hospital. And I said, oh, okay, you know, how is he? And she said, well, I took him to the hospital. He wanted, I said, should I call an ambulance? And he wanted her to drive him. He didn't want an ambulance, and she was a nurse all her life, and, you know, I think he felt more comfortable with her driving him. But just said he didn't look very good, but he was dizzy and wasn't feeling good. And I thought he should go to the hospital, which was unusual for Jimmy, because Jimmy just wasn't the type that would go to the hospital unless he really had to, right? So she took him to the hospital, to the emergency. And she said, I'll phone you if there's anything else, any new developments. I said, sure, didn't they? Nothing of it. So I go back to get her from school. Get home. I think I was throwing dinner together or something. At 4 o'clock, I get a phone call from Shirley. And she tells me that Jimmy had passed away. pressure was really, really low. They couldn't bring it up, couldn't stabilize him. And he had passed away in the emergency. One of the rooms there. Now Jimmy, so you can see why the last picture I have of him was the day before when I saw him run out to his vehicle, because that was the last time I saw him alive. Now, the sad thing is, Jimmy never had a will. My ex and I got one right after our first child was born. I don't know if he thought it was too morbid, but he never wanted to talk about it. I think as a bachelor, he didn't have anyone to leave his stuff to, and probably just maybe didn't care, I don't know. But anyways, he passed away with no will. And I gotta tell you, friends, it was a sad day because people descended upon his house like flies. I don't know if these were relatives or who they were. One day there was 5 vehicles, and one vehicle had a small trailer hooked up to it. I saw some guy carrying out one of Jimmy's DeWalt chop saws. It was beautiful chop saws. And he's just smiling away. I don't know who this guy was, some relative or friend, I don't know who he was. But he was just smiling away. Boy, they were just cleaning house. I saw his sister there, so I assumed that it was all above board. It was, you know, it was okay with her, I guess. I don't know who these people were. Because the whole time I knew Jimmy, I was under the impression the only relative he had was his sister and his nephew. And like I said, I never saw that many vehicles or that many people at Jimmy's house the whole time he was alive. And here he was, he had passed on, and like I said, he had 5 vehicles and all these people there. And like I said, they were just cleaning house. That was sad. Kind of broke my heart. But the good news, the cemetery that his mom was buried in is one of the oldest cemeteries in town. It's quite huge. It's a beautiful location, kind of sort of up on a hill, kind of right in the middle of the old town, the old section of the town. But they stopped allowing burials in there years ago. But if you get cremated, there's room for people when they're cremated. So they couldn't bury me there because he didn't want to be buried with his mom or next to his mom or something like that. But they had him cremated and placed right in the same area as his mom. So that was the good news. My last chip. But Jimmy was a good guy. He was funny. Like I said, he liked to argue. He liked to stir the pot. He knew I was a Bob Dylan fanatic, so remember one time he says, that bloody Bob Dylan. If he had to sing for his supper, he'd starve to death. But he loved his John Wayne cowboy movies and stuff like that. It's funny because the whole street, when Jimmy died, and these new people moved in, they bought the house and they immediately started renovating, and it wasn't the same. It just wasn't the same because they were nice people. He was a young fellow who moved in. He bought the house, and his mom lived there, and his nephew lived with him, so there was 3 of them. And next thing you know, he was feuding with the other neighbors on the other side. I can't remember what that was about. And he bought my old boat off me. I had a 16-foot runabout. He bought it off me. He ended up blowing up the motor because he was running it too hard. And remember one day, I used to just you'd park around the street, and I said, "So where's the boat?" He goes, "Oh, somebody stole it." I said, "Somebody stole it?" He goes, "Yeah, someone stole it." I personally think that somebody come and pick it up, and he claimed it as stolen because the motor was no good anymore. And from what I got to know with the guy, that seemed like something he would probably do. So the whole dynamics of the street had changed after Jimmy passed away. It just wasn't the same, The house doesn't look the same. Well, it does basically, but it's been changed a bit. But, it just wasn't the old neighborhood anymore, So, well, that's it, my friends. That's my Jimmy Nacho story. I think Jimmy would be quite tickled if he knew that I was still talking about him after all these years. It's been gone now for 24 years. Doesn't seem like it. Well, my friends, I want to thank you for tuning in. You people are awesome. You really are. I love making these videos, and I love your comments. You're so awesome. You take care. I hope you're in a happy place. Okay? So until next time, stay awesome. Stay amazing. Okay? Bye now.